Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I am your co-host, Chris Seveny, joined by Mr. James Bateman. Jamie, how are you today?
Good, Christopher. How are you?
I'm wonderful. We got to come up with a new intro. We do the same one every time, get a little more creative or, something, maybe have like dancing monkeys or I don't know.
Thankfully, when it actually comes out, we have the lady who has a much better voice than we do for the intro.
I do say, though, we just cut to the chase. I hate listening to podcasts where they ramble on for 12 minutes about, hey, the sun is shining and the birds are chirping. Well, great. I really don't give a, you know what. I came to listen to the content, not what the weather is on a date that is now in the past. So,
Agreed.
With that being said, we are going to do a little follow-up of some of the frequently asked questions in our Facebook group, the Notes and Bolts from the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. We recently recorded one episode answering some of the questions people have been posing to the group, but we did have a significant response rate. So we are going to continue to provide questions and answers where Jamie and I will be playing badminton, going back and forth with the shuttlecock.
Nice. Did my PT this morning, by the way.
Good.
Yeah. So before we hop in, what's new with you with your note business?
So good question. So
trials and tribulations.
Yes, our trials and tribulations. This week has actually been a wonderful week. I've had two payoffs come in, one on a foreclosure that turned REO and another that was a foreclosure / post-judgment settlement that we negotiated post-settlement after foreclosure with a borrower. So both of those were makes it a very good week. On the kind of, that's on the trials, or which one's a good, which one's a bad? I don't know.
They're both bad.
Okay. On the other front, I've got a property that I've mentioned in the past that we foreclosed on over a year ago. The county still hasn't ratified the sale, and now we got a notice that it's going to tax sale. So we now have to pay the taxes, which we should have gotten paid off on this loan a year ago. But I asked the attorney, I'm like, hey, I pay this. I'm assuming I can recover these costs. And he's like, yes, absolutely. So that's, I say, a benefit, but, make sure checking taxes. Also working on business planning for 2021 and other craziness in the note space. I did have a sad story. I had a borrower who we converted from a distressed CFD into a new note and mortgage, and a week after signing documents the borrower passed away, so that was unfortunate. When we did rework the documents, we did have her and her son on it, so we knew she was elderly and not in the greatest of health, but I thought she would have had more than a week, so that is unfortunate. And still waiting on some cases that we have tied up. I've got two of them in state appeals courts, and another one that I had to go to trial for. We're waiting on the judge to render the decision on that one as well. So once we get some responses on those, I can share some of those stories. How about yourself?
Got a bunch of things going on. I put in a couple bids yesterday on some non-performers. And let's see, I've got a borrower who is trying to file an insurance claim. Well, I would have to be the one to do it because it was forced place insurance, but back from October of 2020. And now it reminded me because you mentioned your borrower who was in declining health. And it sounds like that's the situation for this gentleman as well. So trying to figure out, how that might work as far as, it's over a year ago and now we're potentially submitting a claim for hurricane damage. So little things like that, making sure there is forced place insurance or at least some level of insurance on every loan. Switching some more and more loans over to BiFi. Nothing too out of the ordinary this week. So
Let me start. I'm going to start.
Typical
Oh,
week, I guess.
yeah, I'm going to go off topic a little bit because we're talking about questions and answers. So I'm going to throw the first question at you.
Okay.
The forced place insurance claim from a year ago.
Yep.
Claim was hurricane damaged.
Yep.
What was the damage that
So
they're
this is
claiming?
part of the issue. And there's, like all of these, there's more to the story than there's always
Mhm.
more. But I'm not 100% sure that the borrower was contacting our servicer, Madison, over a year ago about this, and I've not gotten any details on it. It was I think, a garage, so I don't think it was, really affected his main living area too much. And so he was trying to go to get some type of local assistance for the damages, and that's where things left off. And so I thought this issue was had gone away, and now it's resurfaced. But I don't know the full extent of the damages.
Usually what I do in this situations is, I believe my deductible is, I don't know, 5,000 or whatever it is. I
Mhm.
basically let the borrower know. I say, well, first off, the deductible is 5,000. So the first 5,000 comes out of your pocket, and then the rest would go to fix it. So
Yeah.
is it worth more than 5,000? And if it is, do you have the 5,000 to come up with to pay for that? Because
That's good.
if it's a garage, I have no interest in,
Right. Yeah, and that's right. So, and I did call Beth because I currently have insurance through JB Lloyd on it, but they didn't have it I didn't have that at the time. So, but I like to call her, and she's really good about providing kind of general insurance advice. And she recommended I move forward with the claim, because then they would send out an adjuster and actually determine what the damages are, and then we can go from there. So yeah, but that is a good point. I highly doubt that he has the money sitting there to pay the deductible. I mean, of course, I want the property to be, fixed up, but if it doesn't make sense from a business standpoint, I'm not going to do it. So yeah, I have a court date coming up next week. It's 2 weeks from now, actually, for the blight issue, the mattress vomiting RVs. So we can update everyone in a couple weeks on that one.
Did I tell you about the contract for deed that I settled with the borrower, did a short payoff, gave him the deed 7 months ago, and then I get a letter to appear in court in like 2 months because he didn't.
No, I've got another one too. Similar.
Yeah, he didn't record the deed, so my name's still on deed. So now there's trash in the yard, so they'll come after me and tell me to clean it and fining me and ask me to go to court. And so I mailed out this week. I had my attorney work with me, mail out a letter, basically, pleading not guilty, and gave a copy of the deed and the contract and said, hey, look, I've got no rights to this property.
Right. So yeah, similar one where I'm dealing with this week. It's I sold this CFD 15 months ago, and it still hasn't been recorded, the deed and the land contract, or assignment rather. But so yeah, same thing. There's a long list of violations and everything keeps, and the property tax bill keeps being sent to me. And yeah, that's why you got to be careful who you sell to, especially with these CFDs, because if they don't know what they're doing, or they're lazy, or I don't know, I think in this case, the buyer probably, I think, was fairly new to notes and didn't understand the process. But currently that's my problem and your problem to deal with as well, it sounds like.
Yes, it is.
So, all right, let's hit these questions.
I have almost that same shirt. So first question from Gilgans. How does increased inflation impact the note business? Please elaborate more on pricing, expected returns, and what to look for, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, we may have touched on this briefly before, but it's certainly, anytime you get into these economy questions, it's pretty complicated and no one really knows. Now that I've got my caveat and excuse out of the way, I think to be a lender, long-term lender, it hurts from a, if you're lending on a performing loan, the value of that loan goes down. So, in that sense, it could hurt the overall return relative to the value of a dollar. But I would say first of all, if you're buying non-performing loans, I don't think it really has too much of an effect. I mean, the collateral value will keep continuing to rise. Again, who knows? A lot of this has to do with property supply and demand, and property values could certainly level off or decrease with high inflation. But generally, I think assets or owning assets meaning real estate, other assets is a good thing to do when inflation increases. So generally speaking, the property value will go up, the collateral value will go up. Yeah, it's complicated.
I'm going to break this down in simple terms, and this is going to be a good little game of badminton. We're going back and forth right now. Have you ever adjusted a bid based off of inflation or deflation?
No, not at all.
Okay. Okay. So right then and there, you don't adjust your bid. Inflation goes up, your dollar's less. But if you're making 8% on a performing note, you're still making 8% on a performing note, correct?
Sure.
Just your gallon of milk now costs a little more. If you're invested in the stock market or another type of investment, would the same thing be impact? Would it impact it the same way?
Yeah.
So it's exactly. Yes. So my whole, what I'm getting at is, inflation is something that impacts the entire economy. Now, inflation could lead to more distressed assets, which may put more in the market, which may give us better buying opportunity from that perspective. But from a note business, like, do I track inflation in regards to how it adjusts my price or my business? No, not at all.
No, I agree. But if you're somebody, let's say you're doing it, you're a real passive, you buy partials and you buy, you hypothecate, and you're fine with we had a gentleman on who does hypothecations at 5%. And so if you're okay with getting that return at 5%, and inflation's at 5% and it was at 1%, that's going to affect your overall return.
It will, but also you're at 5% because you're a very low risk asset class, and that's what you bought into. Just like banks, lend me money.
Right.
I'm refinanced. I'm looking at a loan right now at 2.5%, and inflation's at 6%. Interest rates go up to 6%. Guess what? The banks made that deal. You got to live with it. So.
I totally agree. I do not, it's not part of my bidding process whatsoever. But if I was in a low risk lending, long-term low interest rate lending situation, long-term high inflation would hurt your overall returns. But I agree in general in the note investing space, especially non-performing space, it's not a factor as far as bidding.
Next question. Can you talk about the management of working with an attorney?
Yes, I can.
So how do you manage your attorneys?
Every attorney is different. And so part of it is understanding how that attorney operates, and how it's not just an attorney, it's their support staff and the systems they have in place. But I think that's one of the things that newer note investors kind of misunderstand, or maybe they're intimidated by attorneys or something. But and we've talked about this on previous episodes. You've recommended getting, in some cases, like a doctor, you would get multiple opinions, right? And so why not do that? So I guess, how do I manage my attorneys? I treat them like professionals, and I give them the opportunity to deliver on what they're supposed to. And then if I'm not seeing results or communication, I will kind of hound them a little bit and bug them and just say, hey, I'm still here. It really does vary based on the particular attorney though. So, and also obviously what you're doing, is it foreclosure? Are we talking drafting a partial agreement?
I assume they meant like foreclosure
Sure.
in this. So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess, honestly, I don't treat them too much differently than any other, I don't know, vendor or any other professional I'm working with.
the thing I look at, and we all have friends like this in this instance, there's the people who basically who reach out to people all the time, and then the people who never reach out to somebody until they're reached out to. You know, like you got a friend who'll never,
Right.
if you never called him, you would never hear from him, but you
Yeah.
stay in contact with him by messaging him, they message back, as an example.
Right.
That's how I treat attorneys, and they're the ones that will never message back. So
Yeah.
I will send them something, and typically they respond.
Mhm.
Now, there's that fine line of stalking them by emailing
Right.
them twice a day or every day. But then in the same token, you don't want to reach out every 3 months, and you really have to understand what the foreclosure process is. So you need to be educated.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So for example, I have an attorney who I reached out to today because on November, I think it's 10th, the complaint was filed and they were going to go try and serve the borrower. Now, once a complaint's filed, it means it's filed as a lawsuit in the court, and then just, you know, the sheriff comes, knocks on your door and says, hey, you've been sued. That's how it happens in some of these states. Now, that process typically takes 2 to 4 weeks. So the day after it gets filed, I don't say, hey, has the borrower been served?
Right.
You know, I'll wait, and I reach out today. Hey, just checking up to see if you've heard if the borrower has been served.
Right.
So, and then 2 weeks from now, if they have, then I know they have 30 days to respond. So I'm not going to reach out to the attorney for 30 days.
Yeah.
If they haven't, then 2 weeks later, I'll put a tickler in to reach back out, not
No.
tomorrow. So
Yeah,
go
really
ahead.
good point. I mean, it's just, that's part of it is, I've actually started, good note and bold, I guess, kind of what you're getting at is I've started asking different attorneys in different situations, different states, what does the next 6 months look like? As far as what do you think, how do you see this playing out? And so I have a case in North Carolina that you're very familiar with that I probably would have been bugging the attorney, even though he's very much on the ball. He's very responsive. But I probably would have been emailing him once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. But now I know it's going to be a while in this particular because I asked the question, I got educated, like you're saying, what does the next 6 months look like? What does the next 2 months look like? How's this going to play out? And they can give you they've been down this road many, many times, hopefully. And even if you're an experienced note investor, maybe you're new to this particular state, maybe you've never done a forfeiture in this county, and ask the question, how's this going to look, so that you can set that tickler and follow up.
And typically I like to have that conversation over the phone, because if they say something and I have questions, it's just much easier to get them answered than going back and forth on email 27 times. But then it also, once you set that relationship with the attorney on a verbal perspective versus, I mean, there's a lot that goes to having a conversation with somebody over the phone. If you've never physically met them in person compared to just via email. If
That's
you had
true.
only met me by email and not through this, you would hate my guts. But now you probably love me because you've heard me and you actually get to see me, but we'll never meet, but that's okay.
No, right. No, it's definitely true. The written word is actually proven to come across as more aggressive than face-to-face or verbal. But yeah, one other thing I'll mention is there are companies out there, and there's one I'm actually looking to test out. This one is called Hello Solutions. I can't vouch for them. I haven't used them, but similar, other companies exist where they will manage the attorney process for you.
Daniel Singer.
Yeah. And they work with Daniel Singer. I spoke with her about that, but there are other ways to go about it too. You don't have to be the person dealing directly with the attorney. But I think just before we move to the next question, I think just understanding that the attorney is a human. The attorney has other cases, that you got to find a balance, like we said, of don't be annoying, but understand on the flip side, that this is your investment, you're going to care about it a lot more than the attorney is. So you do need to be kind of moving the goalposts, or moving the ball down the field, if you will.
We're recording this on December 1st, and I'll tell you, and I'll tell everyone this, it's holiday season. Send your attorney, send all your vendors a holiday gift, and trust me, I'll say this, and 95% of people that listen to this will be like, yeah, right, whatever. When you do that, you get moved up, on certain things. People appreciate that, because it's not like you're paying them off. It's a sense of appreciation. It's a thank you, whether it's just a card that says thank you, that's handwritten, whether it's, some brownies from brownies.com or Omaha Steaks, find out what they like. I sent Debbie wine, you sent her a plant, it's,
She still hasn't tried your wine yet, I think.
Well, yeah, it had to do with the pool. So
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
But it's a good point, and approach it like it's a long-term relationship. I mean, it should be. So yeah, I mean, I had an attorney do a complimentary collateral review recently for me. Thank you, Aaron. And that's because, we've worked on a bunch of different cases together, and she knows most likely there's repeat business there. So, and then the flip side is don't nickel and dime the attorney over something really minor either. So take the long-term view.
Yep. So, okay. Next question from DJ.
Yep.
Talk about your borrower outreach strategies to turn non-performers into performers. Discuss your strategies of finding missing or incomplete collateral. So 2 questions. So first we'll do borrower outreach. Don't show up at the door and start yelling at them, is what I would not do by any way, shape, or form. But what do you do any communication now with your borrowers, or you just leave it all up to the servicer?
I try not to. It's sometimes unavoidable. But I would say in general, I typically want to so let's say I bought a loan and I boarded it with a servicer, a non-performing loan. I normally would like to give the servicer a month or 2 at least to see if they can, first of all, make contact. I like to give the servicer a chance first. I mean, that is their job, right? So if we can not go down the legal route, and typically you are advised to wait, 60 days before pursuing legal anyway. So I'll give the servicer a chance and see if they can make any progress. And I might help them, send them skip trace information or something, or, but I really do my best not to reach out to borrowers directly. And then with that said, I mean, absolutely, if you're on the fence about should I send the demand letter, send it. I would start that process for several different reasons. I mean, I've had numerous borrowers who they don't open the mail from the servicer. It's numerous borrowers who reinstate because they got a demand letter, or many it takes more than that. But I would give my servicer a month or 2, and then I would send a demand letter and start that clock. And then the other thing I'll say is I will do kind of a carrot and stick approach at the same time. So all of this is, ask your attorney, blah, blah, blah. I'm not an attorney, but there's no reason you can't have the threat of legal action going on while you're also offering, a short payoff for cash for keys or whatever the scenario might be. I've said this several times, but it's like parenting. It's like, if you do well, borrower, there's this reward for you. If you don't, there's this, whatever the PC term for punishment is now. So yeah, that's a little bit. Yeah, no, don't belt your borrower. Is that a tweetable quote? How about you? Anything to add there?
So I'll add, so similar, I don't reach out to the borrowers, but what I also will do is, and again, just like the prior question of managing the attorney, I'll manage my servicer to make sure, hey, if I'm paying you extra money this month and my contract says you're gonna do this for reach out, I will hold them to it and basically be
Mhm.
like, they'll be like, I can't get in touch with them. I'm like, keep trying, skip trace them, find, keep looking from
Mhm.
that perspective. And if I find the phone number and get an active number, it doesn't go over well because I get a little more, uh, I don't know what the right term is, but I get a little more fired up.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll do is I'll ride them and I check, my loans at minimum of once a month. I've got about, I think 257 active loans right now. So I will check each one and at least minimum once a month, and I'll go through and I go through the service comments and I'll basically, whack the servicer and basically be like, hey, this is under, you're managing this one. How come you're not doing the reach out? How come you're not doing this? What's going on
Mhm.
with this? Why am I being charged if you're not doing it? And I'm not afraid to ask and mention that. So I again shift it where I just go back to, and again at a point in time I used to do a little more of the reach out, and then it
Mhm.
got to a point where it wasn't worth it because again, focus on your time. And as your business grows, you find things that go back and forth where you do that badminton match of going back from one side of the net to the other. So
Oh,
that's
was
like
that
the
the
third.
was that number? Yeah, number three.
That's number
Nice.
3. So
I
I'm
think
gonna
we'll
try
get
and
to
get to 5 now. Yeah.
so the other thing I was going to say, and I know DJ knows this well because he's well versed in wholesaling, flipping, buying properties, and as well as notes. But I think we even talked about this on the podcast. But um, understanding the borrower's position, this is probably, as far as what I said earlier, this
Mhm,
is more important, is understanding what their need is, right? What their
mhm,
position is, put yourself in their shoes. I mean, that's literally what you need to do is understand what the borrower, just like any interaction with if you're buying notes, selling notes, put yourself in the counterparty's position and understand what their need is and how you might be
mhm,
able to solve that need. At the end of the day, that's where profit lies, is adding value. So
mhm,
provide options, right? Provide them 3 options that still
mhm,
work within your business, your business model. So maybe you
mhm,
provide, like we
mhm,
have one in New York that I bought from you, and it's headed to, so we had a mediation
mhm,
hearing a couple weeks ago, but and so they finally got their attention. There was no communication for a year, and finally they said, we thought we could ride this out we thought we could fix this on our own. Now we realize this is serious. We want to come to the table. Well, we're providing them multiple options: a short payoff, which would be well over what I paid for it; cash for keys. This is a rental property that they maintain very well, right? I'd be
mhm,
happy with that. Um, Whatever they, I can't think. I know we provided at least 3 options for them,
mhm.
and I know DJ's question specifically talked about getting loans reperforming, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's ideal in my world, but
Mhm.
you can't control what the
Yeah.
borrower
It, it,
wants to do.
yeah, it's a workout. I've got one right
Yeah.
now where I have a borrower who's got multiple assets that I own the loans on, and both are non-performing. They made a payment on one, then stopped paying, made a payment on the other. They've got one that's on the market right now for sale, completely overpriced. And if you sold one of the 2 properties, they could pay off both loans. But the borrower is trying to keep both. And the borrower is they're both rentals. Oh, COVID, I wasn't getting paid. Now I've got rents coming in, or the excuses just continue to mount.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I had given them, 3 options back in like June, and I gave them
Mm-hmm.
till like October 1st. And then we pushed it now to like December 1st, and it hasn't come to resolution. So now it's basically, you know, the unfortunately his 3 options are gone, and now
Mm-hmm.
the options are, moving forward in a
Well,
different fashion.
and that hits on a key point as well, which is, don't start legal if you're not going to follow through. And it's like parenting. Don't say,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to have technology tomorrow, if you don't take out the trash, and
Mm-hmm.
then your child doesn't take out the trash, and you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
You need to follow through. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, otherwise they're going to learn you're not serious
Well,
and they're
the,
just going to ignore you.
the other thing is a lot of these non-performers, they've been threatened with demand letters and stuff for years, and it's
Mhm.
never come to anything because the other large lenders basically just get it lost in the shuffle.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
just think you're just another one of them. People don't realize, hey, you're a one-man shop, one-woman shop, or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah. So I'm paying much more attention to this loan, and this means a lot more to me. And on the flip side, I may have more flexibility than the big hedge fund.
yeah. So okay. Second half of that question is discuss your strategies for finding missing or incomplete collateral.
Now, do you want to approach this like it's during the due diligence phase, or I mean, I would presume that's.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll answer in both.
mhm.
So during due diligence, you tell a seller, hey, this is missing,
Yeah.
and that please provide it. Or if you want me to go hunt it down, I'm going to fade my bid. Or
Yeah.
if it's something that is some detrimental, for example, like the note is lost and the lost note affidavit doesn't work, then
Right.
you walk from the deal.
Yeah.
If it's something after the fact that you didn't pick up during due diligence, which happens a lot, to be
Sure.
honest, it could be, oh, you missed one of the things that gets missed a lot is when somebody used power of attorney and the power of attorney document wasn't recorded and you have to go hunt it down.
Mhm.
But I've had issues with this before. The best thing is to ask. There's companies out there, MetaSource, Casey Wilson, an attorney. They've typically all worked with somebody from one of these entities. And as
Mhm.
long as it's not stewardship fund,
Mhm.
is one that pops in my head, who was a company back about a decade ago that I think the owners are in prison for, I guessing fraudulent. I think they're moving money from one fund to the other and just basically, whatever they're
Mhm.
doing. It got into receivership and there were a lot of contract for deeds, but with the contract for deeds, they're also issuing notes, and with the note, they need a allonge, and then you get the allonge. So it
Mhm.
created havoc, and there's nobody to sign. I reach out to the attorney that represented the receiver. The firm said, hey, you got to reach out to this person who's no longer with the firm. I reach out to him and he's like, hey, this is closed. I can't do anything. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of notes out there and a lot of paper out there that it's kind of locked in stewardship fund that you kind of can't do anything with. The way out would be to convert it from a CFD. But I've spun this, completely digressed. And again, ask other note investors,
Yeah.
because ask MetaSource / Orion or Casey Wilson or your servicer or your attorney in that state.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, I think I would, in these scenarios, so what you need to determine is whether it's curable or not. Right. And so
Yep.
I just bought a loan that there are issues with the assignment chain, but first of all, it's performing like clockwork. So, I'm not anticipating foreclosure in the near future. You never know, but it likely wouldn't be a major issue if I had to foreclose. So in this
Yeah.
case, we're actually sending this to Casey Wilson to kind of fix these assignment issues. But like you just said, I faded my bid. I went back to the buyer and I said, I'm sorry, I was the buyer. I went back to the seller and said, hey, look, these 4 assignments have issues. I need to get them all re-signed, all re-witnessed, re-notarized, re-recorded. That's a lot of work and time involved. And so I faded my bid $2,000 and the seller agreed. So that's one way. I've also had a deal where it sat there for 4 months and we were under contract to buy it, but I ended up backing out because there was we needed a gap assignment, and the note seller tried with an affidavit from a different note holder. In other words, he tried to rectify the situation by getting a different company to sign than what we needed. And at the end of the day, at the end of the 4 months, I should say, I was like, look, this is irreconcilable. There's nothing I can do here. I had one on the flip side. I had one I was attempting to sell that. So this is another thing for brand new note investors you may not realize is these due diligence, these collateral issues, collateral file paper issues. surface typically surface when when do they surface, Chris?
They surface,
Are you listening?
yeah,
I think
I'm
you are.
no, yes. So they surface what I
So
find
in
mostly
two
foreclosure.
instances,
When
yeah,
you're filing foreclosure and your
yeah,
attorney's like, where is this? Where is
yeah,
that?
yeah.
What's missing? So that's where I see it the most. And that's where you
Or
have the oh fudge moment.
right. The second
Um,
one I would say is if you're selling the loan, right?
yes.
And
Mhm,
the buyer may find something
mhm,
that you didn't either you didn't find, or you bought 50 loans in a package and you were fine with that, taking on that risk.
mhm,
Those are the two times, at least in my experience, where it's like, oh, how did I miss this? Or a new issue arose after you purchased it or something like that. But I think, figuring out whether it's curable or not. If it
mhm.
is curable, fade your bid, depending on the situation, you know, um, and then go from there. So, and then like we've alluded to, you can do all the correcting work yourself. I mean, you can do all the curative work on your own, hunt down somebody from the bank that, signed in 2012 and, try to get that document re-signed, or you can hire a company to do it for you. So,
Yep. So I'm throwing two notes and bolts in here on this one. So recently, not recent, probably 6 months ago, there was a seller who was selling a low balance first, seconds that were line of credits that turned into firsts and stuff. And I bought, I don't know, like 20 of them. And a lot of them were, some of them got paid off, but every one that I've gone to foreclose on had a title issue. And it wasn't picked up during the due diligence period. And most of them where the title issue existed was in the mortgage, the legal description was off or wrong. And that's not something a lot of times that gets picked up or thoroughly reviewed during due diligence. Typically you're looking at, okay, I've got the note, I've got the mortgage, the borrower and address match, great. And then, okay, do I have the assignments and longes? That's typically what you get in due diligence. But when you go to foreclosure, there's another level of stress test being put to it. So every single one, and basically my attorney's laughing because my attorney's done one like our 6-1 in one state, and is like, oh, quiet title, quiet title, quiet title, in every single one, which they add up. Thankfully, I
yeah.
got these with a steep discount. That's the one. The second thing about the whole due diligence, and I'll say the collateral, is if you're buying in Maine and the loan went through MERS, there's a green something case. Make sure you understand buying notes in Maine that have MERS. And MERS is
Yeah,
the
'cause it
Mortgage
can be
Electronic
risky.
Registry System, because there was a court decision that essentially said they didn't acknowledge a MERS assignment, that it had to be from the actual entity, and you'd have to go back and get them. But unfortunately, most of those entities are out of business, so you don't have a chain of assignments.
Yeah. So MERS was very commonly used in, I don't know, 2003, 2005.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
So in most states, it's not an issue, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's you made me think of, so here's a note and bolt. Check your, I'm sure we've said this one before, but check your hard collateral file for original signatures when you get it. It's easy for me to sit here on a podcast and say that. It's another thing entirely to, when you actually get or have someone do it or whatever, make sure it's checked. But I had as an example, I had a loan that we got reperforming. So DJ's first question, it was a sub performer that we got reperforming. I sold it as a performer. So this is a good one for both of his questions. And what I didn't realize when I sold the loan, I sold it on paper stack and I went through the audit, and I didn't realize that I didn't have the original note. And so I had looked at the note, but when you look, it was a really, really, really good copy, like a blue signature. But when you actually looked more closely, there were two hole punch at the top, two hole punch copy marks. It was a copy. Now we went back and I got an attorney's opinion, and in this particular state, it didn't matter. So this was in Alabama. So, but if this is Florida,
That's a big deal.
may be a big problem. So that's another one is check for original signatures, particularly on a note in a judicial state. So yeah, those are
Okay.
some good. That was a lot of good information. I did have one other note and bolt if we're wrapping up.
I've got two more questions that
Okay, go
we
for
could,
it.
quickly
Yeah.
hit. What are the most important elements in due diligence?
I mean, so taxes, title,
Property.
the property, and I like to throw the borrower in there as well. So if you want to say,
Answers all of it. And
Yeah.
what I mean by all, there's plenty of checklists. I've got a checklist, reach out.
Mhm.
You've got a
Yeah,
checklist.
yeah,
We've got checklists up to yin yang. It's all important.
Yeah.
It's like making a pie. You need to put all the ingredients in and make sure it's the right ingredients, and you do everything the proper. If you screw one thing up, your pie is going to taste like crap.
yeah, and it really depends if you're buying first, non-performers, whatever you're buying. I mean, in the first space, the collateral value is critical. That's it's really your hedge. That's your risk mitigator. Presuming that the paper is all in alignment. And when I say title, that's not just title to the property, that's the whole assignment chain. So taxes, title, which is all the paper, and the property and the borrower. So yeah, absolutely. We use Podio. We've got a checklist in there that goes through everything. And that checklist is critical because if you're buying a bunch of loans, it's very easy to just forget.
Mix them up, confuse them.
Mix them up, or just forget to order an inspection report or something. It's so the checklist is key there.
Okay.
So I know Matt Kelly calls it underwriting versus due diligence, but I don't know. I mean, to me, underwriting is on a loan, right? When you're initiating a loan, and I'm not going against Matt, but and due diligence is typically more in real estate on a property. So I think either one the note space kind of crosses into both.
Yep. So last question, and then we'll wrap up this episode, is how do you determine how much money to keep aside in foreclosure or other circumstances?
Yeah, I think someone asked this a while back. It's a good question. What?
Throwing a dart at the dartboard.
Yeah, right. Who knows?
Yeah.
I thought that was you're serving the birdie or something. That's number 4. It's number 4.
Or do you do underhand or do you overhand?
So okay. So actually, if you want to know, I was watching YouTube trying to get better at badminton, and especially in doubles, you want it because the serve is different. You actually want to hold it. It's like a flick of the wrist like this. For those watching on YouTube, it's hard to
like this.
So you actually like hold the birdie like this and then just flick it forward. It might
sound kind of like
silly.
You flip baseball cards almost.
Because you don't want because you don't want a lot of arc, because they'll just smash it. So that's a very common way to serve. After the 2 weeks of YouTube videos I watched before I ruptured my Achilles, I'm an expert. What was the question? I had something. I had an answer.
How to determine how much money to set aside?
Yeah. So there's no clear answer to this, but I think if it's a non-performer, I think the answer I gave a while back in the group was $5,000 for a non-performer and maybe $1,000 for a performing loan. Totally varies based on the dollar amount, the state, how performing is it actually? And then the other thing is, how many loans do you own? I mean, that number would go significantly down for me per loan. I'm not holding, I'm not intentionally holding $300,000 for foreclosure. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
It's much easier to manage as a portfolio, in honesty, because it's like owning a bunch of rentals. You're not gonna have to replace the roof on every single rental each year, but you may have to replace one, so you hold enough for one. Similar to if you've got a bunch in foreclosure, yes, you hold money, but if you spread those out over time, one gets finished, so you get paid, so you can take some of those funds to pay for next one. When you only have 1 or 2 notes, it's really a question of how much you set aside, but do you have money to set aside? If it's coming from, this is the only money I have, how much do I need? Then $5,000, maybe even 10, depending on, you want to make sure you could, if you don't have enough, then you're gonna have to sell the note. But if you've got, say, a line of credit of, $50,000 on your house or something that, hey, I don't want to use it for notes, but I had a rainy day fund if I did have to throw a few grand in, it's very different. But, foreclosures on average, between, if you're gonna have to foreclose, clean out, and everything else, I would guesstimate you're gonna spend about $7,500 between the foreclosure, clean out, your servicing, everything. And then, basically, some say 5, I'd say between 5 and 7,500.
It's probably higher. Yeah. I mean, taxes you're probably paying for at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, all good points.
It depends on the state and the borrower.
Yeah. And that's another reason I like to buy performing loans as well, because you're not normally hit with a $10,000 attorney bill in one invoice, right? I mean, it's normally spread out a little bit. So if you got cash flow for your business, okay, I see this coming, I can kind of, allocate some of this cash flow for this attorney bill. So yeah, I think it is one of those hurdles that actually does get easier as you grow.
Well, it's interesting because last night I had a workshop with my membership group. We were going through my calculator. And one of the things that came up on it, because in my calculator, it doesn't automatically spit out the foreclosure cost based off of a state. And someone asked the question, why? And I said, because it's something that you need to truly think about. Because let's take Florida, for example. If you're in Florida and you have a borrower who is deceased and has 20 heirs, you have to notify every single one of them and basically sue every single one of them. Your foreclosure costs are going to be pretty expensive. Whereas if you have one person or two people, they got divorced and they both moved out of the house and they don't care, that's a standard foreclosure. So I don't like to just generate a number. I want that investor to think about what they know about the note, to put that information in there, because I don't want the calculator to just be spitting out numbers that tell you. The calculator should be a tool that you use to think through the process, to wage the risk and weigh the different risk to give you an answer of what, based off certain scenarios, your returns would be. If it spits out that number, it's not giving you different scenarios.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you don't promote your stuff enough on here. Talk about your membership group for a minute.
So I've finally launched, after a long period of time, the 70 Note Syndicate, which is a membership group that through the month of December are giving people free access to. And then in January, people will be paid members. We have 2 membership levels, the professional and executive. Professional is for people who kind of scratching the surface and just heard about notes and kind of just want to get a glimpse. The executive is for people who want to be in notes or really want to learn about notes. We have a monthly workshop where I'll provide a workshop which might be on bidding on assets, due diligence, reviewing collateral, basically more understanding of the note space. And then we'll also have a monthly webinar where we're going to bring on special guests. For example, like we talked about today with attorneys, we're going to definitely go into a true deep dive of walking through the entire process, not the high level generic stuff that you see on a lot of the stuff that's out there right now. As you know, I like to roll up my sleeves and really dive in deep and understand, the questions of, okay, on this contract for D, do I foreclose, not foreclose? Do I need a note? What do I do with the note? Kind of answer a lot of those questions that come up. So those are 2 avenues. And then also once a week, I have a coffee with Chris, where we get 30 minutes every week. We just host a Zoom meeting where people can ask me anything in advance, or I'll talk about a certain topic from that perspective. So when you look at it, there is roughly 4 hours a month that you have of my time minimum, between 2 1-hour workshop, a webinar, and then the coffees. So, and you get access to every single document that I've used, my JV agreements, my contract, my loan sale agreements, my calculator. So you get everything, and it's $100 a month or $1,000 a year. So when you look at it, you're basically paying $25 an hour for my time. which if you consult with me, I charge $250. So
Yeah. Or if you go to another guru's training, you may be paying 25 grand up front. Just
yeah,
saying.
it's up to 75.
Yeah.
Which actually, I'll mention, there was a Facebook post about a guru that we both know. And basically this person was touting like, oh yeah, well, I know this guru. And somebody made a comment of, it's not something that you probably should be proud of. And then basically someone made a comment about, well, you know, some lawsuits and stuff and so forth. But the person came back kind of noting that, well, you know, this person, they settled their lawsuits and paid everyone off with money out of their own pocket. And I'm sitting and reading this being like, what planet is this person on?
Yeah,
But
check your facts.
yeah, check your facts. But yeah, but you know, they're still, you know, rip roaring, ready to go and still training and so forth. And you know, so on. But you know,
So can somebody just cancel if they're like, this sucks?
Yeah,
With your group?
I mean, well, here's the thing. You get this whole, you know, I started a few weeks ago. You get the whole month free. So if you don't like the first month, you didn't, hey, guess what? This sucks, Chris. Well, great. Guess what? I'll give you your money back. Oh, wait a second. You didn't pay anything.
Yeah.
But if, yeah, people can cancel at any time, you know, from that perspective. And people sign up, they get access to the documents that they have. The calculator is the only document that is, I'll say, licensed. So when you do cancel the membership, the calculator does go with it, you know, from that perspective. But all the other documents, you know, basically people, they're theirs. So
now, are you actually going to drink coffee every time it's Coffee with Chris?
So the first one was done at noontime, which it was, I had meetings on the morning. So it was actually my first cup of coffee. And the one I have is tomorrow and it's at 12:30. And I will have coffee because I usually do have a afternoon cup of coffee. If I'm doing it 9 o'clock at night, then, you know, basically it won't be coffee, but, you know, it'll have to be something else. So maybe kamikazes with Chris, you know, as we move to late night. So
you would definitely need your massage chair after a 9 o'clock coffee.
So which is still, oh man, like I said, we got that like a week before COVID shut down. That thing arrived at our house. So thank God. Oh, the timing, and yeah, being home for the year. Yeah, it's wonderful. Get a massage chair. That's my note and bolt.
All right. So since we're wrapping up, my note and bolt is you're buying a loan, or if you're buying a note or selling a note, you know, just be professional and be honest, because I had a deal recently. It's the same one I actually just talked about, where there was an assignment chain challenge, and we faded our bid. But even before I faded my bid, the note seller said, your offer is not the highest, but you're the best to work with, and so I want to sell it to you. So, you know, sometimes just being, you know, just being a good person and just being honest and being professional. And if there are issues, if you do have to fade your bid, come back with an attorney's opinion versus just some BS or something. I'm throwing in a bunch of note and bolts here. Hopefully you'll have time to actually come up with one.
Yep,
but
I do.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the point is, like, it's not always the highest bidder who wins in a transaction. There are other factors. Can you close quickly? Are you gonna be a royal pain, you know, even after the sale? Again, we bought this loan and I wasn't the highest bidder, but because the seller said she liked us. So
yep. No, that's important to know, because I was talking with somebody this morning actually, and they lost out on a bid by like 15,000, but the seller basically was going back and forth because it was a broker, and the person who was buying it for the extra money hadn't bought from them before, and the person wanted to close before the end of the year. And it's at, hey, this person's closed before, and I'm a broker, my reputation's on the line if I go to the higher bid and they don't close, and then I don't close this thing by the end of the year. So, you know, that comes in the serious play, that brokers want not to look bad, and they want to make sure the person's going to close the deal. So my note and bolt is taking a little some more trainings through Mind Valley, which is an app website.
I was gonna ask you that.
So-
if you'd been doing that still.
Yep, I've been doing it. I've been turned it up a notch, and it's interesting because one I'm learning right now is guy Jim Quick. It's called Super Brain on just techniques
yeah.
to remember.
Asian guy. I think I've
Yep.
seen him. Yep.
Yep. And it's interesting because two quotes that just caught my eye are: a lot of people know what to do, but don't do what they know. Okay.
Mhm.
And I relate that to notes with, talk about gurus in training, or we talk about due diligence. You know how to do due diligence, but a lot of times people will not do what they should be doing,
Mhm.
from that perspective, or they take shortcuts.
Mhm.
So I just want to reiterate, that's such a powerful quote. A lot of people know what to do, but don't do what they know.
Mhm.
And the other one is, the difference that makes the difference is always action,
Hmm.
by taking action. And I say this
That's good.
because as part of my membership group, I've got a group of people who like to ask questions. And then I have a few people in the group who sit there quietly, and I know certain things they don't understand. Like when I throw my calculator at you for the first time, there's not a
I'm sure it's
snowball's chance.
overwhelming.
There's not a snowball's chance in hell you're going to understand everything. So if you don't have a question, it means like, oh my God, I'm completely overwhelmed. But raise your hand and say, can
Mhm.
you just understand certain parts? And that's where I think with investors out there, you have the opportunity to reach out to others. We provide content through the podcast. People email me or email you or email other people who know certain things. Take advantage of that. Ask the questions. There's no such
Mhm.
thing as a stupid question.
Yeah.
Just make sure you do a little bit of research before asking that question.
I like the action one. And just to piggyback, this is my, people will say taking action can be risky. It's like
Mhm.
note investing can be risky, but there's an opportunity cost if you don't take action. And I go back, I've used this one before. Do you want to rust out or wear out at the end of your life? Do you want to rust out or wear out? I'd rather rust out. And based on my current state, I feel like I am rusting out, but no, but I mean, take action, because there is risk in not taking action. There's risk in taking no action. That's all.
So, and the other one, I'll add one more, is you don't have anything, you do everything. And when you think about it, he's like, you don't have focus, you do focus. Focus is an action. You don't have creativity, you do creativity. You don't have memory, you do memory. And it's all about training yourself, and it's all about doing. And that's
Mhm.
really, again, the next steps of anything is, it goes back to taking action. So,
That's good. Yeah.
so people can take action by voting for Notes and Bolts as Known Investor Best Podcast. Leave us a
Nice.
review on iTunes or your favorite listening station. And what else can they take action on, Jamie?
Go out and do some good deeds.
Thank you, sir.